Hello, my name is Laura Birkel. I'm one of the registered dietitians here at Gunderson Health System, helping you through this weight loss journey with the bariatric surgery program. Today we're going to be talking about sugar and beverage changes that occur after surgery. All right, today our class will highlight sugar in food. We're going to talk about the two types of sugar, both natural and added. We're going to look at how to find it on the nutrition label, as well as the different effects it has on our body after surgery. Some of these include dumping syndrome. We'll also discuss the importance of adequate fluid intake, the type of beverages to drink, and also to avoid. There will be different strategies we'll discuss, such as fluid goals and how to keep yourself hydrated after surgery. All right, let's dive into what sugars are. First, we'll talk about natural sugars. These are the ones that occur naturally in our complex carbohydrates. These include fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and are digested pretty slow. The reason for this being is that they contain fiber. That's the main difference between natural and added sugars. Natural sugars also will not be listed on the ingredients label, so they are going to be thrown in with the total sugar amount. Next, there's also added sugars. This is more of our simple sugar, so digested very quickly. It's used to just enhance the flavor and make food taste good without it occurring naturally. It's digested fairly quickly. It is lacking in that fiber, so that's what increases that digestion. It is listed on the ingredients label, and we'll discuss later how to find this and locate it. Sugar can be hidden in multiple products. Companies are very good at advertising items as healthy and then telling us actually they've got a lot of sugar added to make them taste good. Some products that may surprise you are condiments, ketchup, barbecue sauce. Whenever it says honey or maple or one of those other sweeteners, those aren't naturally occurring in that specific sauce, so they technically are added. Yogurt. Yogurt is another one where we see a lot of added sugar. Fruit syrups, different sweeteners, anything to make that yogurt taste sweet. Granola bars. Surprisingly, these are considered a health food, yet there are quite a bit of sugars added, especially if, again, there's listed honey on the label. Other acidic foods, like your tomato soup, they will add sugar in order to decrease the acidity. So be mindful of that. And salad dressings are another one that are difficult to identify. If you have a light salad dressing, sometimes they'll add sugar to take the flavor of the fat that was removed. As we know, sugared cereals like your Lucky Charms or Cocoa Pebbles are going to be very high in added sugar. They taste good, they're sweet, they are more of a dessert than a complete meal. And lastly, our cakes, our cookies, our muffins, those are added sugars because, that's how you make it taste good. So anything chocolate or sweet, be mindful of watching for those added sugars. And we'll talk about where to find that in just a minute. Let's look at first the labels. So on the left, you'll see a label that it does not include a specific added sugar line. That is because this label is from 2018. They finally have updated, and you should be seeing more of the labels that are on the right-hand side. Now, for men, it's recommended that you have about 9 teaspoons per day of sugar. For women, this is 6 teaspoons per day. When we talk about after bariatric surgery, we are limiting it to 5 grams of added sugar per serving. How this equates into teaspoons, you probably are wondering. There are 4 grams per teaspoon. So 1 teaspoon of sugar is about all we can handle after that physical change we encounter with surgery. So looking for less than or equal to 5 grams of added sugar on your label is really going to be helpful as we look at tolerating those different food items after surgery. Let's talk a little bit about sugar alcohols. You might see these listed on the label as well, or be familiar with them from different products such as chewing gum, sugar-free candies. Certain protein bars are going to use sugar alcohols to flavor the item. Sugar alcohols are often going to end in the ITOL, like the one listed here. Mannitol is another one, erythritol. These you'll, like I said, commonly find in your sugar-free products. So are they good? They're sugar-free. Well, sugar alcohols, like any artificial sweetener, is going to be not digested by the body. And since with bariatric surgery, we are physically changing the digestion process, sugar alcohols are going to be digested very quickly. They're going to go through the system. They're kind of a rougher artificial sweetener that likes to be evacuated as soon as possible. When we talk about sugar alcohols on the label, try and still follow that added sugar guideline of less than or equal to 5 grams on the sugar alcohols. This will help give your gut a rest and make it so that you're not quite in a bad mood after eating something that's sugar-free. Let's transition then into artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are pretty common. We see a lot of them on different sugar-free products or light products, maybe some diet items as well. Some different examples include Splenda, sucralose, Equal, aspartame, Truvia, which is a brand of stevia, which is a flavoring coming from the leaf of a plant. Besides stevia, many of these artificial sweeteners are not digestible. So how do they make it so they don't raise our blood sugar or cause that sugar response? They're not digested. So they go straight in and then straight out, really just giving you the flavor that you taste on your tongue. Sugars such as these are recognized as safe by the Food and Drug Administration. We recommend that you switch to more of the artificial sweeteners so that you don't get such a intense response to sugars. These are going to agree with your body a lot better, especially as it's recovering from surgery, and you'll still be able to get a lot of different flavor to the items that you're taking in. Many of the protein shakes and like sugar-free puddings and jellos will have some artificial sweetener flavoring to them, and everyone tolerates a different type differently. Now, if you're still nervous about having these products in your foods or in your beverages, just focus on looking for that stevia, that plant-based one. That's coming from a natural leaf. It's just a very high level of sweetness, so they barely need any in the product, and you'll be able to taste your product without worrying about if you'll have a reaction to that artificial sweetener. But these are products that we will recommend after surgery. Let's talk about dumping syndrome. If you know someone that's had surgery, or if you've been doing your research, you've probably heard of this nasty effect. Some people call it the frothies, but we'll talk about some more specific symptoms than that. Dumping syndrome basically is rapid gastric emptying. It's food, in particular sugar, that moves from the stomach to the small bowel way too quick. So if you think about it, we're really changing how our body digests food when we're removing part of our stomach. Up to 85% of our stomach is being removed. Some of our intestines are being rerouted if we're doing a gastric bypass procedure. And so what this does is it really decreases the amount of space for digestion. When we take in a high volume of sugar, alcohol, or caffeine, and some other items that we'll discuss in a little bit, that causes a rapid response. Our body cannot handle that degree of sugar or molecules in the body. This often will occur in 50 to 70% of people who have gastric bypass or sleeve gastrectomy procedures, most often within those first couple of months. And let's talk about what this will look like. So, If you are experiencing dumping syndrome, you will be having some cramping, some pain. Some people notice more of the vasomotor response, flushing, rapid heart rate, diarrhea or vomiting can occur as well. Our body is basically trying to get that substance out of our system as fast as possible because it just simply can't handle it anymore. It's not built to handle that degree of sweetness, caffeine, alcohol, those sort of items. Some people will also start sweating, kind of feeling like they have a low blood sugar. Some might feel dizzy, lightheaded, and be out for the rest of the day. Others have reported feeling unwell for up to 48 hours after the ingestion of something. So this is definitely a common thing, like I mentioned, after those first 2 months with surgery, but there's also some symptoms that can occur up to a year after surgery. So some of these are called subtle symptoms. These are going to be drops in blood sugar, some energy level swings, so all of a sudden feeling like you have all the energy in the world to just feeling like you are on an empty tank, feeling very tired, run down, and some of this will occur within the first 30 minutes of ingesting the food. Others, it may take up to 1 to 3 hours after you eat something that will, omit this response. So it kind of is a rush that you're just going to feel out of the blue. So let's take a look at, how do we avoid this? First, let's go back to basics. Structure. Trying to get the right amount of meals in a specific time. We want to take our time with our meals, start our day right, eat within the first 1 to 2 hours of waking to start that process of nourishing our body, and even if we can only tolerate small amounts. We want to make sure we're eating every 3 to 4 hours thereafter. This is in order to get as much protein and nutrition as we can, while our portions are significantly decreased from our usual before surgery. If we have good structure, we're less likely to eat a large volume of food or fluid at one time, and we are less likely to overwhelm our system and cause this dumping syndrome response. The other important thing is to include a protein at every meal. As you learned in the foundations video, protein is digested one of the slowest out of all the macronutrients. It takes up to 3 to 5 hours. So if we have a protein, not only are we supplying our muscles with the necessary nutrients to not lose that muscle mass, but to keep up with our fast weight loss that's happening. But protein's also important for that digestion component as well. It's going to help things digest at a slower rate. Caffeine is also something that we recommend you stay away from for those first couple of months after surgery until your body can really handle it. There's a couple of reasons for this. The first is that caffeine naturally dehydrates. It's known to have what's called a diuretic effect, so it's going to promote the elimination of fluid. You drink a cup of coffee, try and compensate with a cup of water because you're going to lose that cup of coffee fluid. The other thing is that caffeine can sometimes make digestion go faster. So this will also kind of promote that dumping syndrome. Also, fatty foods. So we've talked a lot about sugars, but the fat in food can also be overwhelming. Now, fat is digested the slowest out of all the nutrients. Between carbohydrates, protein, and fat, fat comes in last place. Higher fat foods are going to kind of sit there in the stomach and might make you nauseous, and they're going to promote that dumping syndrome response as well. We want you to abstain from alcohol intake as well. This, with removing the stomach, we're also removing some of the mechanisms to digest alcohol. So it's got less roadblocks in the way and is going to flow right down the system. Including nutrient-dense food sources, such as those that include fiber and those natural sugars, will also promote a healthy gut and prevent this dumping syndrome. Again, slowing down that digestion, making it less overwhelming for our system. We'll also want to avoid simple sugars and, as you have probably heard, not drinking with meals, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's look into these details. What truly changes after surgery? This is a huge change in our body's system. Think about every process that we've grown up with, and now all of a sudden we're physically making a change. So let's look at what we have to do to adjust to this. The first one on the list is straw use. Think of your new stomach or your pouch as a tiny suitcase. This suitcase, you can only pack the essentials. One of the non-essentials is air. So we don't want any extra air in our system. We want to save that suitcase space for nutrients that are going to help us get better and recover from this surgery. When we drink from a straw, we're naturally sucking in some air. Same with the carbonation. Sodas don't really give us much nutrition anyways, so we want to prioritize other beverages such as water or protein. Carbonation also has those tiny bubbles, so those are going to take up some space in our pouch, in our stomach, that we really need to be using for other items. The other one is no alcohol. So not only will alcohol promote that dumping syndrome, but it will also make it so that we're not getting our nutrients. Alcohol has calories just like anything else. However, that calorie, that energy, is not providing any nutrition to our body. So it is going automatically to storage into fat. All this work that you're putting into bettering your lifestyle and promoting a healthy new you, we don't want to throw that all away by going back to our ways of drinking alcohol regularly. Alcohol also is a fluid. It's going to take up room in that suitcase. We don't have room to pack that in our suitcase. So it's important to make sure that you're prioritizing, those nutrient-dense items to get into that suitcase. Alcohol also has there's a high rate of addiction after bariatric surgery. Your psychologist will discuss this a little further with you, but we do encourage complete sobriety from alcohol once you have surgery for not only your safety, but also to make sure you're getting the necessary nutrients you need to be successful with this change. Now let's talk about how to drink your beverages. Again, like I've said before, we have this huge change in our digestion. We're going to have to do things differently. Slow and steady is going to be the best way to do this. Aim for about 8 to 10 ounces of water every hour that you're awake. This means trying to catch up in between our meals. We're going to want to follow what's called the 10-20 rule. So stop drinking 10 minutes before a meal. This will allow that pouch to empty out the liquid and it be nice and empty by the time we're ready to eat some protein, some food sources. Then you're going to want to wait 20 minutes after you're done eating your meal before you resume drinking again. This, again, will allow the body to empty out that pouch and make sure you're not overfilling it. We want to make sure that everything's comfortable and you're not getting too full off of liquids and food at the same time. When it's time for a meal, food is that priority for that suitcase, that small pouch that we're creating. When it's time to drink, drinking is taking and fluid is taking that priority in the pouch. So, now that you've learned a little more about the sugars and beverage changes as well as some of the side effects of not following some of these guidelines, such as dumping syndrome, let's look at making more of a SMART goal to continue your progress as you go through this process. When you're making a SMART goal, again, remember, the more specific, the better. Helps keep yourself more accountable, measurable, add a numerical value to it. Make it attainable, make it achievable, make it realistic and relevant to what you're doing. And lastly, make it more time-based. So be considerate of the time you're going to allow yourself to make this change. Thank you everyone for tuning in and best of luck on this rest of the journey.